It happened in 2011, my senior year at Windrow High, a school known more for its moldy ceilings and broken vending machines than any actual academic prestige. At the time, I was just a kid, trying to keep my head down and coast to graduation. I wasn't popular, but I wasn't invisible either. Mostly I existed in that safe middle zone where nothing ever happened. Until something did. The story I'm about to tell you took place on a stormy Friday in late October. Most of us were already checked out, minds drifting toward Halloween plans and rumors of who was throwing what party. But I was stuck in 6th period study hall, half asleep, counting raindrops on the window, while our supervisor, Coach Heron, watched football highlights on his phone with the volume off. That day, the library was closed due to hazardous ceiling damage. Or at least, that's what the administration told us. I remember the announcement clearly. Principal Morris mumbling something over the intercom about safety inspections and limited access to certain parts of the school. Whatever. I didn't care. The library was just a place people went when they wanted to pretend to be productive. Around halfway through the period, Coach Heron suddenly looked up from his phone and asked if anyone could go grab a stack of math textbooks from the storage room in the north wing. Apparently, someone forgot to return them after the last testing week, and the math department wanted them back before the weekend. No one volunteered. So naturally, Coach pointed at me. "You, Marshall, take the cart. Room 6C. The keys on my desk." I wanted to groan. Not because I was lazy. Okay, maybe a little. But because 6C was in the old wing. The wing no one liked going into. The floors always felt damp over there. And it smelled like chalk, mildew, and some kind of sour cleaning agent that never actually worked. Still, I nodded and took the key. I should have just faked not finding the room, but curiosity got the better of me. The hallway leading to room 6C felt colder than the rest of the school. I swear the temperature dropped 10 degrees the moment I passed through the arch separating the wings. The lights above flickered faintly, and the paint on the walls looked like it hadn't been touched since the early 90s. The only sound was the distant hum of rain against the building's tin roof. I reached the door to 6C. The frosted glass window on the upper half of it was dusty, almost opaque. I tried to peer through it, but all I could see were vague shapes. Desks, maybe shelves. The key slid into the lock easily, and I pushed the door open. What I expected was a basic storage room filled with supplies and old textbooks. What I found instead was weird. The room was dark, not pitch black, but dim. Dust particles floated in the single shaft of light, breaking through the cracked blinds. Dozens of books were scattered across the floor, not stacked. Some were ripped open. A few desks were overturned, and in the far corner, facing the wall, was a tall, wooden cabinet that looked older than the rest of the furniture in the school. It had carvings on the doors, Not decorative swirls or anything nice, but messy, jagged scratches, like someone had gone at it with a knife. Still thinking it was just an old supply room, I stepped inside and clicked the light switch by the door. Nothing. Dead. The air inside 6C was stale and smelled like something that had been locked away too long. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight, sweeping it across the room. That's when I saw it. In the reflection of the cabinet's glass panel, just for a split second, I saw a figure standing directly behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly fell, but there was no one there. The door behind me was wide open. The hallway beyond was empty. I told myself it was just nerves, my imagination, a trick of the reflection. Wasn't proud of how fast my heart was racing, but I kept telling myself to calm down. I moved toward the books and started stacking them on the cart, trying to get it over with. Then, something slammed. Hard. I froze. It wasn't the door. That was still open. It sounded like wood slamming on wood. My flashlight darted toward the cabinet. The doors were closed now. I was sure, absolutely sure, that they'd been slightly open when I came in. I even remember thinking the left door was cracked wide enough to see the shadow of books or binders inside. I didn't move. My fingers gripped the edge of the cart like it was an anchor. Then I heard breathing, not mine, from inside the cabinet, low, guttural, wet. Every instinct I had screamed at me to get out of that room, but I stepped closer. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me thought it was a prank, that someone, some student, was hiding inside to scare whoever came for the books. I reached for the handle and slowly pulled one of the cabinet doors open. There were no books inside. There weren't even shelves. It was hollow, empty, except for one thing. A small scrap of lined notebook paper, stuck to the back wall with a single tack. I took a closer look. The paper had one sentence written in shaky, cramped handwriting. Don't look at it. As I backed away, I felt the weight of the room shift. It's hard to explain unless you felt it. Like the air had folded in on itself. The light in the room, even my flashlight, seemed dimmer. The shadows were too long. The space between things felt wrong. That's when I realized something else. There was a shape in the corner of the room, a human-sized shape, not moving, not breathing. But there, it stood in the darkest part of the room, where the light didn't reach, like it refused to be lit. I aimed my flashlight at it directly. Nothing. The light just died in that direction. I blinked. My ears were ringing. My legs wouldn't move. And then the shape tilted its head. A jolt of electricity shot through me. That's when I ran. I don't even remember grabbing the door. I just remember bursting into the hallway and nearly knocking over one of the janitors, Mr. Willis. He looked at me, startled. Jesus, kid, what's the rush? I turned back to point at the door. It was closed. I swear I left it wide open, but now it was sealed shut. I just stammered something about wrong room numbers and booked it back to study hall. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about that paper. Don't look at it. What was it? And why did I feel like it had seen me? 2 days later, I got curious. I went online and searched for any mentions of room 6C. Most of it was dead ends, but buried deep in a forgotten forum for Windrow alumni, I found a thread titled, "Still Remember 6C?" The posts were old, dated between 1997 and 2004. A few people talked about strange drafts, hearing whispers, or seeing furniture move. One user posted, "If you hear breathing in 6C, don't respond. If it knows you noticed, it doesn't stop." Another mentioned the cabinet. "There's something inside. It never leaves. It just waits for people to see it." I clicked on the profile of the person who wrote that. It had been deleted. No other posts, no name, just gone. A week passed. I tried to forget. Then one night, around 3 a.m., I woke up needing water. As I passed my bedroom mirror, I froze. In the reflection, behind me, a tall, black shape. No features, no face, just a silhouette, watching. When I turned around, nothing. But the mirror still showed it. Still, silent, head tilted. I threw a blanket over the mirror, slept with the lights on. The next day, I begged my guidance counselor to move me to a different study hall. I never told anyone the real reason. I never went near room 6C again. Graduation came. I left Windrow behind. But to this day, sometimes when I pass a window or glance at a reflection, I swear I catch a glimpse of something standing behind me, watching, just out of reach. Maybe I made a mistake that day in room 6C. Maybe you're supposed to leave some doors closed. And maybe, just maybe, there are things that wait for us to see them. When I started community college, I wasn't expecting much. Just classes, commutes, and a degree at the end. It was a small school in upstate Pennsylvania, with buildings that looked like they hadn't been renovated since the late 70s. The main buildings were functional, but it was the overflow buildings on the edge of campus that always felt wrong. Especially the old industrial arts building, the one nobody really used anymore, except for a few random departments storing overflow supplies. In my second semester, I enrolled in an evening photography class. It ran from 6 to 8:30 p.m. twice a week in the fine arts wing. Since my house was far, I usually stayed on campus after my earlier classes. On one of those long days, I found myself wandering into the industrial wing during my break, partly out of boredom, partly out of curiosity. I had seen the door to the building propped open that day, something that never happened. The place had always been locked and lifeless. I pushed open the heavy metal door and was immediately hit with a scent, a mix of oil, rust, and mold. The lights inside flickered to life in sections, the hum of old fluorescent bulbs coming alive like a slow wave. The hallway stretched long, and most of the rooms were empty or filled with old desks and broken machinery. It felt like a place frozen in time. I poked around for a bit until I found a room labeled Woodshop 2C. The door was ajar. Inside, everything was covered in dust: table saws, drill presses, worn-down stools. The only thing out of place was a stool in the center of the room, with fresh wood shavings on the floor below it. I assumed maintenance must have been working in here recently, maybe cleaning out the place. Still, something about it felt off. I left after a few minutes, but something lingered with me. That sense of not being alone. The next time I went into the industrial wing, I brought my camera with me. It was the perfect place to get eerie photos: rusted machinery, long shadows, broken light filtering through high windows. But when I reviewed my photos later that night, I noticed something strange. In one shot, far in the background, nearly obscured by the reflection of glass, was a figure. A man. Tall, wearing a heavy apron, face obscured by what looked like an old welding mask. I was shaken, but I rationalized it. Maybe it was a worker, or maybe even a student who had permission to be in there. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. And over the next couple weeks, it got worse. Whenever I walked past the industrial wing in the evening, I would hear something. A soft, dragging sound, or a metallic tap, tap, echoing faintly down the hall. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Then one night, while waiting for my photography class to start, I passed the hallway and saw that the door to Woodshop 2C was wide open again. I swear it hadn't been earlier. Against my better judgment, I went back in. The room was dark, except for the faint glow of moonlight through the windows. But this time, something was different. On the same stool from before, there was now a piece of unfinished wood in a clamp. Something newly carved, with edges that looked fresh and wet. I stepped closer. It was a carving of a face. Hollow eyes, elongated mouth, warped features, like it was silently screaming. Suddenly, I heard the dragging noise again, only much closer now. I turned and saw the hallway light flicker behind me, and a shadow moving across the far wall. Not fast, not slow, just deliberate, steady. I backed away, heart pounding, and turned to leave. But there he was, standing in the doorway, the same man from my photograph. Tall, covered in a dark apron, face hidden behind a battered welding mask. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stood there. The air in the room felt thick, like it was pressing down on me. I did the only thing I could. I shoved a stool at him and sprinted toward a side exit, one I'd seen earlier when exploring. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see if he followed. I reported it to campus security. They checked the building, found no one. Said the door had been left open because a maintenance crew was scheduled the next week. But none of the workers they spoke to had been there that day, and there were no records of anyone entering the building at the time I'd been there. I transferred schools the next semester. A year later, I was back in the area visiting a friend, and I swung by campus to pick up a transcript. Out of curiosity, I walked past the old industrial wing again. The building was boarded up now, closed permanently due to safety concerns, a faded sign said. But something caught my eye through one of the tall, dirty windows. That stool, still in the middle of the room, with a fresh pile of wood shavings beneath it. I don't tell this story often. People think I'm exaggerating or making it up. But I know what I saw. And I know someone, or something, was in that room with me. Maybe still is. Maybe still waiting. There's something off about old schools. Maybe it's the smell of damp brick hallways, or the yellowed ceilings with flickering lights. Or maybe it's the knowledge that generations of students have lived entire pieces of their lives inside those walls. Laughing, crying, failing, cheating, growing up, and all of it leaves something behind. I don't know, but I do know that something is wrong with Halpern High, the school I went to for junior and senior year. It was one of those enormous, Gothic-looking public schools that was built in the 1920s and never really updated. Big iron gates, red brick, weird stone gargoyles on the corners. Most of the building was still functional, but there were whole wings that had been abandoned and roped off for decades. Students used to joke that there were more ghosts than teachers walking the halls. My group of friends, Kelly, Ruben, Zoe, and me, didn't take most things seriously. We liked messing around, daring each other to do dumb stuff, and sneaking into places we weren't allowed. Classic high school idiocy. So naturally, when Ruben told us about the fourth floor, we had to check it out. There's no fourth floor in Halpern High. At least, not officially. The staircases go up to the third floor, where the chemistry labs and old photography room are. Above that, there's a locked door with a "Do Not Enter" sign and a rusty metal padlock that looks like it's been there since the Cold War. Supposedly, the fourth floor was condemned after a fire in the late 70s, and no one ever reopened it. But Ruben swore he saw someone looking down at him from one of the blackened windows up there during PE. He said the face wasn't right. Pale, gray, no expression. Just staring, motionless, watching. We thought he was full of it, until Zoe mentioned that her older brother had heard the same story when he was a student, decades earlier. That Friday, we made a plan. We'd meet at school after dark. Zoe had a copy of her mom's faculty keycard. She was a substitute and had no clue Zoe had swiped it. We'd sneak in through the side door, go up all the way, and finally see what was behind that locked fourth floor door. It was supposed to be a joke, an adventure, something we could brag about. But what happened that night, I still can't explain it. We met at 11:45 p.m., just outside the back parking lot. No one else was around. Halpern High looked like a prison in the dark. Rows of black windows, that giant iron gate, and not a sound except the wind. Zoe's keycard worked. We slipped inside, giggling and whispering, our flashlights barely cutting through the thick dark of the school's old hallways. The place smelled like old paper and mold. Every creak of the wooden floors echoed like a shout. We made our way up, floor by floor, checking classrooms along the way for fun. Most were empty, but one still had a mannequin left over from a first aid class. Reuben jumped when he saw it and swore it moved. At the third floor, the air changed. It got colder, heavy. We reached the final flight of stairs, where the locked door waited, except it wasn't locked. The "Do Not Enter" sign had fallen off. The padlock was on the floor, rusted and split open like it had been forced. We stared at it for a long moment. "Is this part of the prank?" Kelly whispered. "No one's been up here in decades," I said. "Who would even bother with a prank?" Reuben reached for the door and pushed. It swung open with a long, groaning creak. Beyond was a narrow hallway that didn't look like the rest of the school. The floors were warped and buckled. The lockers were dented and discolored, some hanging open with torn binders and rotted gym shoes spilling out. Paint peeled off the walls in long, curling strips. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered, but only some. Most were completely dead. We stepped in slowly, staying close. The place felt abandoned, in the way a graveyard feels abandoned. Not forgotten, just quiet. Too quiet. We explored the hallway, peeking into each classroom. Most were filled with debris, charred desks, overturned chairs, broken chalkboards. It was clear there had been a fire here. Just like the stories said. In one room, we found something written on the blackboard in chalk. "We never left." I brushed my fingers across it. The chalk was fresh. Zoe wanted to go back. Kelly agreed. But Reuben, always the idiot, said we should at least check the science lab at the end of the hall. He said he felt like someone had been in that room recently. He was right. The lab door was open. Inside it looked untouched by the fire. The counters were clean. The stools were upright. Beakers and flasks were still on the shelves, as if someone had set them there just yesterday. And in the middle of the room was a tape recorder, a weird, boxy one, like from the 70s, a single red button blinking. Reuben walked up and pressed play. Static. Then a voice. A man's voice. "They walk during the third hour. Don't let them speak. Don't let them know your name." We stared at each other. "What the hell is this?" Zoe asked. Then the door slammed shut behind us. We screamed. Reuben grabbed the handle and yanked. It didn't budge. No sound outside. No movement. Then we heard it. Footsteps in the hallway. Slow, heavy, but not walking like a person. More like a dragging shuffle. The sound of something huge or broken, moving with effort. The footsteps got closer, then paused. Then a knock, not on the door, on the window, from inside the room. We turned, and I swear I will never forget what I saw. A face pressed against the interior window of a storage closet. Pale, wet, with eyes like white film, and a mouth torn open too wide. It stared at us. Then it whispered my name, my full name. I hadn't said it. None of us had. No one did. I turned and screamed for Ruben to open the door. He was already trying, his hands shaking. Zoe was crying. Kelly was standing still, like she couldn't move. I don't know how we got the door open, but it happened all at once. The hallway outside was different, longer. The lockers were gone. The floor was darker, wet, and the lights were completely dead. We ran until our lungs burned, until we crashed through that fourth-floor door, down the stairs, and burst out of the school into the cold night air. We didn't talk until we were back in Zoe's car. Everyone was pale, silent. When we tried to explain to others what happened, no one believed us. Of course they didn't. We went back the next day. The door was locked again. The padlock was intact. The "Do Not Enter" sign was bolted tight. And the hallway behind it was gone. I swear to you, it didn't even exist. The stairs just ended in a wall now, like we imagined the entire thing. But we didn't imagine it, because Ruben's hand, the one that pressed the button on the recorder, he had a name burned into the back of it. My name.